When the maid stepped into her billionaire boss's study at midnight, she wasn't supposed to see anything. But what she found shattered the mansion's silence, and the man who ruled it. From that moment, her life stopped belonging to her, because his secret made her the one thing he could never let go of. What happens when love is born from the one mistake that should have never happened? You're watching Mr. Leo Love Stories. If you believe love can begin in the darkest places, then like this video, subscribe to this channel and leave a comment below telling me where you are watching from to help get this video to others, and ensure to stay with me till the very end, because this one will break you. Now, let's begin this journey of love. The clock inside Maxwell Manor had stopped at midnight. Or maybe time itself had decided to hold its breath. Stephanie Williams pressed her palm against the cool brass door of the study, the faint hum of the city slipping through the tall glass windows. Every other light in the mansion had gone out hours ago. She should have been asleep in the staff quarters. But she couldn't. Not tonight. The marble floors still gleamed from her mopping, catching the silver reflection of the skyline beyond. She was halfway through polishing the handles when a low voice sliced the silence. "You shouldn't be here." She froze. The rag slipped from her fingers and fell with a soft thud. At the far end of the room, framed by the city's glow, Cole Maxwell stood by the window. His white shirt was half unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up, tie draped loosely around his neck. A tumbler of amber whiskey glimmered in his hand. Stephanie had seen him hundreds of times in daylight, immaculate, distant, his footsteps a warning for everyone to scatter. But tonight he looked undone. I didn't mean to intrude, sir," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought everyone had turned in." Cole's eyes, tired and sharp all at once, lifted from the glass to her face. "Couldn't sleep either?" She shook her head. "No, sir. Just finishing the West Corridor." West Corridor's spotless. He turned back to the window. "You cleaned it twice this week." Her breath hitched. He remembered. "I guess I like keeping busy," she said softly. Cole let out a low hum, almost a laugh. Busy is a polite word for restless. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was electric. The mansion around them seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of distant thunder and their unspoken thoughts. Stephanie took a cautious step forward, eyes tracing the skyline beyond him. "You don't sleep much, do you, Mr. Maxwell?" He glanced sideways. "Not when the rooms echo back my thoughts." There was a sadness in his tone that surprised her, something raw, human, fragile. She'd heard rumors among the staff, the fiancé who left him, the business empire that demanded everything but gave nothing back. Still, standing this close, she realized those stories only touched the surface. "You could try counting blessings instead of hours," she offered, forcing a small smile. "Blessings?" He gave a dry chuckle. "I have houses, cars, headlines. None of them keep me warm at midnight." Stephanie looked down, clutching the edge of her apron. "Maybe warmth doesn't come from what you have, sir. Maybe it comes from who notices." Her words hung in the air. Cole turned fully toward her now, eyes narrowing not in anger, but curiosity. "You're bold for a maid." "Honest," she corrected gently. He studied her, the glint of defiance in her dark eyes, the calm steadiness of her posture despite the class that separated them. Something stirred in him, a feeling he thought had burned out long ago. "Tell me your name," he said. "Stephanie Williams." He repeated it, slowly, deliberately. "Stephanie." The sound of it softened his entire face. A streak of lightning flashed across the window, and for an instant she saw the reflection of them both, two lonely silhouettes in the same room, yet worlds apart. Cole placed his drink on the desk. "Sit down for a minute." "I really should." "Please." The word came out almost as a plea. Against her better judgment, Stephanie moved toward the chair opposite him. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears. She could smell the faint cologne on his collar, the warmth of his presence mixing with the night air. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You ever wonder why people like us end up alone, even in a crowd? People like us? She echoed, half smiling. You're a millionaire, sir. I'm a maid. We don't belong in the same sentence. Cole shook his head slowly. Loneliness doesn't care about money, Stephanie. The honesty in his voice startled her. For a moment she forgot who he was, the man whose name decorated business magazines, and saw only the fatigue in his eyes. You shouldn't be telling me this, she murmured. And yet here you are, he replied. A beat of silence. The rain outside thickened into a steady rhythm, tapping against the glass. Cole stood, walked to a cabinet, and poured another drink, not whiskey this time, but water. He handed it to her. You look nervous. I'm sitting alone with my boss at midnight. I'd say nervous fits. He smiled, faint but real. You're honest again. She took the glass, her fingers brushing his for a fleeting second, just enough for a spark to leap through her. Neither moved. He spoke first, voice low. Do you ever feel invisible, Stephanie? All the time, she confessed. But that's not always bad. When no one sees you, you see everything. He studied her in silence, as though her words unlocked something in him. Maybe that's what I've been missing, he whispered. Someone who sees. Her breath caught. You don't even know me. Not yet. The clock ticked. 1, 2, 3 seconds that felt like forever. Finally she stood, heart racing. I should go. Cole's voice followed her to the door. Will you come back tomorrow? She hesitated. That depends if there's anything left to clean. He smiled. There always is. She left before the thunder could answer for her. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the glass atrium, flooding Maxwell Manor with gold. Everything looked the same, perfectly polished floors, symmetrical furniture, crystal bowls catching the light. Everything except Stephanie. She couldn't unhear his voice. You're bold for a maid. Maybe that's what I've been missing. Someone who sees. It replayed in her head while she scrubbed the marble steps, polished mirrors, and folded linen in silence. Her co-workers noticed the days. Earth to Steph, Anita called, balancing a basket of towels. You okay? You've been wiping that banister for 15 minutes. Stephanie blinked. I'm fine. Just thinking. Anita smirked. About the boss. Stephanie's rag froze mid-wipe. What? No. Oh, come on. Anita leaned closer. The whole staff's talking. You were seen coming out of the study after midnight. Stephanie's stomach dropped. We were just, he couldn't sleep. We talked. Anita grinned. That's how it starts. Stephanie sighed. There's nothing between us, Anita. He's my employer. And men like him don't see women like me. Anita tilted her head. Maybe he does. But be careful. The rules here don't bend for people like us. Those words clung to Stephanie's mind all day. The rules don't bend. That evening, she passed the long corridor toward the study, intending to drop off a tray of mail. The door was slightly open. Inside, Cole Maxwell stood with his lawyer, Mr. Langford, voices low but sharp. She's efficient, but too visible, Langford was saying. It doesn't look right, Cole. A maid hanging around at odd hours. Cole's reply was cold. I don't make decisions based on gossip. Langford's tone hardened. You're too lenient with the staff. It sends the wrong message. Stephanie froze outside the door, heart pounding. The words stung, too visible. She left the mail quietly and slipped away. That night, she stayed late again, alone in the laundry wing. She told herself it was just to finish work. But she knew better. She wanted to see him, or maybe just to prove to herself that last night wasn't a dream. At 11:45, as she was folding sheets, The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. Steady. Familiar. Cole appeared at the doorway, hands in his pockets, jacket undone. "Miss Williams," he said quietly. "Still working?" She straightened. "Trying to be invisible, sir." He frowned slightly. "Why would you want that?" "Because that's the rule. We're not supposed to be seen. Only what we clean is." He leaned against the doorframe, studying her face. "Who made that rule?" "People like you," she said before she could stop herself. He raised a brow, amused. "People like me?" "Rich men who live in big houses," she said, voice trembling but steady. "Men who want everything perfect, spotless, silent. They don't like reminders that someone like me makes that happen." Cole didn't respond at once. The air stretched thin between them. Finally, he said, "Do you really believe I'm like them?" She hesitated. "You were last night. Different. But today, I heard you. I heard you tell Mr. Langford I'm too visible." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, guilt, maybe both. "I was protecting you, Stephanie," he said softly. "Langford looks for weakness in everything I do. You don't deserve to be a weapon in his gossip." "I don't need protection, Mr. Maxwell," she said. "I need respect." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then I'll give you that. Starting now." He reached for the sheet she was folding and helped her smooth it across the table. His hand brushed hers. "Tell me something," he said. "Why do you work this hard?" She looked up at him, the honesty in his question catching her off guard. "Because work doesn't lie. When I scrub a floor, it shines. When I wash a dish, it's clean. People don't always give back what you give them, but work always does." Cole nodded slowly. "That's beautiful." She laughed lightly. "It's exhausting, that's what it is." He smiled, a real one this time. "Maybe you should let someone else carry the weight for once." "I don't know how." "Then maybe I'll teach you." The words lingered longer than they should have. Days passed. Their encounters grew subtle but constant. He'd ask for her specifically to tidy the library. He'd leave a cup of tea by her cart in the mornings. Sometimes, their eyes met across the hall and she felt it again, that pull. But whispers followed. Anita caught her one afternoon and whispered, "Steph, everyone's noticing. You can't keep getting called to his office." "I'm not doing anything wrong." "I know that," Anita said gently, "but the world doesn't." One evening, Stephanie returned from the market to find Cole alone in the garden. He stood beneath the lanterns, reading a letter, his jaw tight. When he noticed her, he quickly folded it away. "Bad news?" she asked softly. "Just business," he said, voice clipped. She hesitated, then asked, "Why do you always say that word like it's a wound?" He looked at her for a long time before replying. "Because everything I've ever lost came wrapped in business." The sadness in his tone pulled at her chest. She wanted to comfort him, but she also knew the line between them. Still, her words came before reason could stop them. "Maybe not everything you lose stays lost." Their eyes locked. The wind moved between them, carrying something unspoken. Later that night, Stephanie found an envelope on her cleaning cart. No name. Inside, a single line, handwritten in ink that matched his pen. "Not everything you fix is broken. CM." Her chest tightened. She tucked the note in her pocket, heart racing. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with quiet tension. Langford's car was in the driveway again. Cole was in the study, door closed. From outside, she heard raised voices. "You're distracted, Cole," Langford snapped. "Whatever this is, with the staff, end it." "This conversation's over," Cole said coldly. "Don't let a maid ruin you." Stephanie backed away before she could hear more, shame burning behind her eyes. She didn't ruin people. She cleaned up their messes. That night, she worked late again, but this time her hands trembled with anger. She didn't notice Cole enter until his reflection appeared beside hers in the glass. "Stephanie," he said quietly. She turned, eyes glistening. "Do you really think I'm ruining you?" He blinked, stunned. "You heard that?" "Everyone hears everything in this house," she said bitterly. "Only difference is, I don't get to defend myself." Cole's face softened. "No, you don't ruin me. You remind me I'm still human. That's what terrifies them." "Then maybe I should stop," she whispered. He stepped closer, almost desperate. "Don't." Their gazes locked, the air between them thick with what they couldn't say. The silence was louder than any confession. When she finally turned to leave, he said her name softly, almost breaking. "Stephanie, there are rules in this house, but none of them make sense anymore." She looked back over her shoulder, eyes trembling but firm. "Then maybe it's time someone rewrote them." And she walked away, leaving him standing under the dim chandelier, realizing that for the first time in years, he wanted to break every rule he'd ever made. The days that followed were strange, too quiet, too heavy. Stephanie tried to lose herself in routine, polishing glass, changing linens, dusting bookshelves that hadn't been touched in years. But every corner of the Maxwell mansion whispered his name. She told herself the silence was safer. Then one morning, she found something unexpected. Inside the study, buried beneath invoices and letters, lay an old photograph, cracked at the edges, framed in silver. Cole Maxwell, younger, smiling beside a woman in a white dress. Stephanie froze. So this was her, Eleanor, the ex-fiancée the staff whispered about. Before she could look away, Cole's voice came from the doorway. "Found a ghost, did you?" She jumped, heart hammering. "I was just cleaning. I didn't mean to." "It's fine." His tone was calm, but his eyes told another story. He walked over, picked up the frame, and stared at it like it weighed more than steel. Eleanor. She liked to rearrange everything. Said life needed constant improvement. Even love. Stephanie watched him set the frame down gently. Did she leave? He let out a dry laugh. "No. I did. She just never noticed." The honesty hit her like wind through an open door. "You know," he said, turning to her, "I used to think if I made enough money, people would stay." He gave a small, sad smile. "Turns out, success doesn't buy loyalty. It just buys quieter heartbreak." Stephanie's eyes softened. "Maybe you were looking in the wrong places." He studied her. "And where should I have looked?" "Anywhere someone looks at you without expecting anything back." For a moment, neither moved. Then the sound of the grandfather clock broke the spell. Cole cleared his throat, voice rough. "You have a way of saying simple things that sound like truth." She smiled faintly. "Maybe because I don't have time to lie." That evening, rain fell again, painting the windows with soft silver lines. Stephanie stayed behind after the rest of the staff left, collecting the day's laundry. In the quiet hum of the house, she heard faint music, a piano low and aching, coming from the ballroom. She followed the sound, barefoot on the marble floor. Cole sat at the grand piano, shoulders bowed, fingers tracing melodies that sounded like memories. He didn't see her at first. The sight of him, this man who ruled boardrooms, now lost in music, fragile and human, caught her off guard. She stood in the doorway until his voice cut through the tune. "Do you always watch in silence?" She startled. "I didn't mean to." "Relax," he said, the corners of his mouth lifting. "I'm just not used to having an audience." "I didn't know you played." He kept his eyes on the keys. "My mother taught me. She said music was emotion without disguise." Stephanie stepped closer, drawn by the melody. "That's beautiful." He stopped playing. She was. The house hasn't sounded the same since she died. The pain in his voice made her heart twist. She moved beside the piano, lowering her voice. You hide a lot of ghosts in this place, Mr. Maxwell. He looked up, meeting her eyes. And you? What do you hide, Miss Williams? Her lips parted. No one had asked her that before. I hide exhaustion, she admitted quietly. I work to forget, to pretend I'm not invisible. But sometimes, pretending is easier than hoping. He stood slowly, his presence filling the space between them. You're not invisible, Stephanie. Not to me. The words hung heavy. She wanted to step back, but her feet stayed rooted. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because I might start believing them. He smiled faintly. Maybe you should. A flash of lightning split the sky outside, casting them in white light. For one heartbeat, they stood face to face. No walls, no rules, no distance. Then Stephanie whispered, "Good night, Mr. Maxwell," and slipped away before her trembling voice betrayed her. The next morning, she tried to keep her head down. But something had changed. Cole's usual coldness at breakfast meetings vanished. He smiled more. His footsteps in the halls no longer echoed with command, but with purpose. Anita noticed first. What did you do to him? She teased. He's almost human this week. Stephanie blushed. I just cleaned the piano room. Anita grinned. You sure you didn't dust his heart too? Anita. I'm just saying, Steph. Be careful. Men like him get bored, and women like us pay the price. Stephanie forced a smile, but the warning settled deep inside. That night, as she walked through the West Wing, she found the library door ajar. A soft flicker of firelight glowed inside. She peeked in. Cole sat on the sofa, reading an old leather-bound book. When he noticed her shadow, he closed it gently. Can't sleep again? She asked. Can't stop thinking, he admitted, about how someone can live surrounded by people and still feel unseen. Maybe you need to look at different people, she said softly. He rose, taking a step closer. Like you. Her breath caught. Maybe. He smiled faintly. Dangerous answer. Honest one, she whispered. For a moment, they just stood there, the firelight dancing between them, soft and dangerous. Then he broke the spell, glancing toward the window. You know, when my mother died, this house went silent. I thought it was because she took the warmth with her. But now... He stopped himself. Now what? She asked gently. He hesitated, voice trembling just enough to reveal the man behind the armor. Now I hear footsteps again. Laughter. Music. It's like the house knows something's alive again. Stephanie's eyes glistened. Maybe it's not the house, Mr. Maxwell. Maybe it's you. He didn't answer. He only looked at her like she was a sunrise he hadn't earned. Later, when she reached her small room in the staff wing, she found a folded note slipped under the door. No signature. Just one sentence. Thank you for bringing light back into this house. She pressed it to her chest, eyes closing as a tear slipped free. The following week, Maxwell Manor moved like a clock that had forgotten time. The staff whispered less, watched more. Stephanie kept her head down, but she could feel his gaze everywhere, the weight of it, the warmth of it. Every hallway she entered carried his echo. Every room she cleaned had traces of his scent. It was maddening, intoxicating, and wrong. But desire has never cared much for rules. One evening, the storm returned. Thunder growled across the city as rain lashed against the mansion's windows. The power flickered, lights dimming to a soft glow. Stephanie was in the east corridor, folding linen when a crack of thunder made her jump. The power went out completely, darkness swallowing the hall. Her flashlight flickered once, then died. Great, she muttered under her breath. Somewhere down the hallway, a faint glow appeared, a lantern. A silhouette moved toward her. Stephanie. Cole's voice. Deep, steady, but softer than usual. She exhaled in relief. You scared me. Sorry, he said. The backup generator failed. I was checking the circuits. Do billionaires normally check their own circuits? She teased nervously. He smiled faintly in the dim light. Only when they're trying to avoid thinking too much. She tilted her head. Thinking about what? He hesitated. The rain filled the pause. About how something can feel right and wrong at the same time. Her chest tightened. Is this about work? His eyes lifted, and even in the half-darkness, she saw it, the look that burned past boundaries. No, Stephanie. It's about you. She froze. Every sensible part of her screamed to step back. Every human part of her wanted to step closer. Mr. Maxwell, she whispered, you shouldn't. Say your name like that, he interrupted gently. Then tell me how else I'm supposed to say it when it's been echoing in my head all week. Her heart thudded painfully. This isn't right, she said, her voice trembling. He nodded. I know. But when has right ever felt this alive? They stood inches apart, the lantern's golden light dancing across their faces. Stephanie could feel her pulse in her throat, her breath trembling against the storm. Cole, she said, daring to use his name for the first time. He inhaled sharply, the sound breaking the silence. That's the first time you've said my name, he murmured. Say it again. She shook her head, half smiling, half afraid. You're impossible. And you're unforgettable, he said quietly. A crash of thunder cut through the air, and for a moment the entire house was illuminated in a white flash, two figures caught between lightning and longing. Then the lights blinked back on. Reality returned, cruel and clear. Stephanie stepped back, shaking her head. We can't. Cole looked at her, pain flickering behind restraint. Because of what people will say. Because of what I'll lose, she said. My job. My peace. My self-respect. He took a slow breath. And if I told you that I'm losing those same things without you? Her chest constricted. She wanted to say something, anything, but words failed her. Instead, she turned and walked away before the trembling in her hands betrayed her heart. The next morning, she woke to silence. No footsteps, no orders, no voice. Cole didn't appear for breakfast, didn't cross her path once that day. He had retreated, and somehow, that hurt more than his closeness. When she passed by his office later, she saw him through the glass, expression unreadable, posture rigid. He was back to being the man everyone feared. Anita caught her staring. Don't, she whispered. You're playing with fire. Stephanie tore her gaze away. I'm not playing. Then be ready to burn. 2 days later, the staff was gathered for a sudden announcement. Cole stood before them, voice clipped, eyes cold. I'll be traveling for a few days. Mr. Langford will oversee operations in my absence. A murmur spread through the group. Stephanie kept her eyes down. Cole's gaze lingered on her for a fraction of a second, unreadable, restrained, before he walked away. As soon as he was gone, Anita nudged her. That's your cue. Distance. Fresh air. Forget him. Stephanie tried. She really did. But at night, lying in her small plain room, she found herself staring at the ceiling, remembering the flicker of lantern light on his face, the warmth in his voice when he said her name. 3 nights later, a storm hit again, harder this time. Rain drummed against the windows like restless fingers. The power surged and went out once more. Stephanie lit a candle and sat by the window, watching the lightning flash across the skyline. A soft knock broke the quiet. She opened her door and froze. Cole stood there, drenched from the rain, eyes tired and desperate. I tried to stay away, he said hoarsely. I can't. She stared at him, speechless. You're supposed to be out of town. I was. But every mile I drove felt wrong. I kept hearing your voice, seeing your face. I told myself it was madness. He stepped closer. But maybe madness is the only honest thing I've ever felt. She wanted to push him away. She wanted to hold him forever. Instead, she whispered, "You're making this harder." I know, he said. But tell me to leave, and I will. Right now. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The storm outside howled. The candle flickered. "Stephanie," he said softly, "I've spent years living by rules that kept me lonely. You walked in at midnight and made me feel again. Don't ask me to unlearn that." Her tears came before she could stop them. And what happens when this ends? When you wake up one morning and realize I'm not your equal. Cole reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek. Then I'll remember that the only thing that made me feel equal to anyone was you. Her breath hitched. He was too close now, too honest, too real. And before she could think, she whispered, "Don't go." He didn't. He stepped forward, closing the distance, until his forehead rested gently against hers. The air trembled between them, lightning flashing, thunder rolling like a heartbeat. Neither spoke. Neither moved. Then, as if pulled by something stronger than reason, Cole whispered, "If this is wrong, I'll spend forever being wrong." She closed her eyes, tears and rain and emotion blurring everything. And for the first time, she didn't run. The next morning, sunlight poured into the halls as though nothing had happened. But everything had. Stephanie could still feel the echo of his touch, the warmth of his voice, the weight of what they'd begun. And Cole Maxwell, the man of order and silence, now carried a secret no wealth could control. He'd fallen for the one woman his world was built to forget. Morning sunlight flooded Maxwell Manor like nothing had happened. But inside, everything had changed. Stephanie Williams moved through the house as if walking through glass, careful, quiet, trying not to break. Every corner reminded her of the night before. The flicker of lantern light. The tremble in his voice when he said her name. The way her heart had whispered "don't go" before her mind could protest. Now she couldn't look at him the same way. And worse, she couldn't stop looking at him at all. But Cole Maxwell had gone silent again. 3 days passed. No midnight visits. No notes. No accidental encounters in the hall. Just distance, cold, deliberate, and suffocating. She saw him once, through the glass doors leading to his office. He was there, as always, immaculately dressed, surrounded by files and screens. His focus unbroken. His face unreadable. It was like the man from that stormy night never existed. Anita noticed her distraction. "Steph, you dropped the silver tray," she said gently. Stephanie blinked, realizing her hands were trembling. "Sorry. Long night." Anita sighed. "He's avoiding you, isn't he?" Stephanie didn't answer. She didn't need to. "Listen," Anita said, lowering her voice. "Men like him, they don't know how to be vulnerable for long. They panic, then they hide behind power again. Don't take it personal." Stephanie nodded, but the ache in her chest didn't listen. That evening, as she finished tidying the study, she noticed something on the desk, a small silver cufflink. The same one Cole always wore. She picked it up carefully, tracing the engraved initial CM. She could have left it there. But she didn't. Instead, she placed it in a small velvet box and wrote a note. "You left this behind. Maybe not just this. SW." She left the box on his desk and walked away, forcing herself not to look back. The next morning, the box was gone. But in its place was a folded card. "Some things we don't leave behind, even when we try. CM." Her heart fluttered, hope and fear colliding in her chest. That night, she dreamed of the storm, of him standing in the doorway again, drenched and broken, saying he couldn't stay away. She woke before dawn, breathless, clutching her chest like the dream might still be real. And then, as she stepped into the kitchen to start breakfast, she froze. Cole was there. He was seated at the marble counter, sleeves rolled up, no tie, coffee steaming in front of him. He looked exhausted and human. "Morning," he said quietly. Stephanie swallowed hard. "You're up early." He smiled faintly. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd make coffee." "You made coffee," she teased. "The world must be ending." "Maybe it already did," he said softly, eyes meeting hers. The silence between them was thick with everything unsaid. "You've been avoiding me," she said finally. "I had to," he admitted. "If I didn't, I wouldn't stop." "Stop what?" "Wanting you." Her heart tripped. "Cole." He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "You were right. This, whatever this is, it's dangerous. You have a job, a life. And I. You have a reputation," she finished quietly. He met her eyes. "I have feelings I can't afford to have." The confession cut through the air like lightning. Stephanie took a slow breath. "Then what do we do?" Cole stared at the coffee between them. "I think we pretend nothing happened." Her stomach dropped. "Pretend." He looked up, regret flickering across his face. "It's the only way to protect you." "And who protects me from pretending?" she whispered. He didn't answer. Later that day, the mansion buzzed with new guests, executives, investors, people in suits who smelled of control and polished lies. Cole was the perfect host again, confident, charming, untouchable. Stephanie kept her distance, but her chest burned every time she saw him shake a hand, smile at a stranger, laugh too easily. Once, he caught her watching. Their eyes met, just for a second, then he looked away, as if the connection itself was dangerous. It felt like a wound that refused to close. That evening, as the guests left and the house fell silent again, Stephanie sat alone in the laundry room, folding towels mechanically. Anita appeared at the doorway, holding 2 mugs of tea. "Here," she said, handing one over. "You look like you could use something warm." Stephanie smiled weakly. "Does it get easier, Anita?" "What?" "Loving someone who can't love you back the same way." Anita sighed. "No. But sometimes it teaches you the difference between love and longing." Stephanie stared into her cup. "What's the difference?" "Love heals. Longing burns." Stephanie blinked away tears. "Feels like both." That night, she walked the halls one last time before bed, checking windows and turning off lights. The mansion was still, the air heavy with storm residue. As she passed the study, she heard a faint sound, music. Cole sat at the piano again, playing a slow, aching tune. The same one from that night in the ballroom. He didn't see her. Or maybe he did and just didn't stop. She stood quietly at the doorway, listening, each note pulling her closer, each chord unraveling the distance he had built. When he finally stopped playing, she whispered, "You're not good at pretending." Cole turned, startled. "Stephanie." She stepped closer, eyes wet. "You can fool your board, your lawyer, even yourself. But not me." He stood, expression pained. "You shouldn't be here." She smiled sadly. "You keep saying that. But somehow, I always end up here anyway." He looked at her for a long time, then sighed, defeated. "You make it impossible to do the right thing." "Then maybe the right thing isn't the safe thing," she said quietly. For a moment, he almost reached for her. Almost. But then he stepped back, voice breaking. "Go before I make this worse." She nodded slowly, tears spilling silently. As she turned away, Cole whispered something she barely caught, so soft it almost vanished into the air. You were never invisible to me. She paused, trembling, but didn't turn back. That night, as she lay in bed, the rain began again. Gentle, rhythmic, familiar. She closed her eyes and let it carry his words through her mind until sleep finally took her. A week of silence. That was all it took for the mansion to feel like a tomb again. The laughter that had returned, gone. The piano, silent. And Stephanie's heart, aching in a rhythm that refused to quiet down. Every morning she told herself she'd move on. Every night she heard echoes of his voice in the hall. Then one evening, everything changed. It began with a phone call. Cole Maxwell's voice thundered through the halls, sharp, angry, unlike the man she'd seen at the piano. "Langford, I said no mergers behind my back." The study door slammed. Moments later, Anita rushed to Stephanie, wide-eyed. "Steph, he's furious. The board's threatening him. Something about a leak." Stephanie frowned. "A leak?" "Yeah. They think one of the staff overheard something private. Langford's using it to push him out." Her stomach twisted. Langford. The lawyer who'd warned Cole to end it with her. Now he was turning Cole's vulnerability into a weapon. Hours passed. The staff went to their quarters. The rain began again. Stephanie stayed behind, polishing the last bit of silverware just to calm her nerves. Then she heard it, footsteps down the hall, heavy and uneven. Cole appeared, eyes bloodshot, tie loosened, whiskey in hand. "Miss Williams," he said flatly. "Mr. Maxwell," she replied carefully. He gave a tired laugh. "We're back to formalities now, are we?" She hesitated. "You're angry." He nodded once. "At everything. At myself. At the people I trusted. At this house." He paced, running a hand through his hair. "Langford's been recording me. He's got proof of misconduct. Claims I've been distracted." Distracted. Cole met her eyes. "By you." The words hit like lightning. Stephanie took a step back. "He's blaming me." "He's blaming us," Cole said softly. "And maybe he's right. You make me forget who I'm supposed to be." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," she whispered. He exhaled shakily. "For a man like me, it is. I built this empire on control. The minute I lose it, they'll eat me alive." "Then let them," she said suddenly, voice trembling. "Let them see what being human looks like." He froze. She stepped closer, eyes burning. "You spend your life building walls no one can climb. And when someone finally reaches the top, you call it a mistake." "Stephanie." "No," she said, tears spilling. "I'm not your weakness, Cole. I'm what's real. And if you can't face that, then maybe I've been cleaning the wrong kind of mess." Her voice cracked, and she turned to leave. But his hand caught her wrist, gentle, desperate. "Don't go," he whispered. She turned slowly, her breath catching at the look in his eyes, broken, raw, unguarded. "I can lose everything," he said, voice shaking, "and still survive. But if I lose you—" He swallowed hard. "I don't know what's left of me." Her heart stuttered. "Cole." He stepped closer, every word trembling with truth. "I tried to be noble, tried to be logical, but my heart doesn't care about rules anymore." His voice lowered to a whisper. "It disobeys me every time you walk into a room." Stephanie's tears blurred her vision. "Then stop fighting it." And before logic could interfere, she was in his arms. No hesitation, no titles, no hierarchy. Just two broken souls finding the same rhythm again. The storm outside roared louder, wind pressing against the glass like the world itself was witnessing their surrender. Later, when the thunder faded to a soft hum, they sat in silence by the window. Stephanie rested her head against his shoulder. Cole spoke quietly. "Do you regret it?" She smiled through tears. Only the time we wasted pretending we didn't feel it. He nodded slowly. Then no more pretending. But the words felt too fragile to believe. Outside, the rain kept falling, soft, endless, uncertain. The next morning, Stephanie woke early. The mansion glowed gold again, calm after the storm. She could still feel him, the warmth, the confession, the honesty that had cracked his armor. For a fleeting moment, it felt like peace. Until Anita burst into her room, breathless. "Steph, you need to see this." She handed her a tablet. On the screen, a headline. Millionaire CEO Cole Maxwell under investigation. Whistleblower claims inappropriate relationship with staff. Stephanie's world tilted. Underneath the headline, a blurred photo. Her. Leaving his study the night of the storm. Her hand still on the door. His reflection visible inside. She couldn't breathe. "Steph," Anita said softly, "what did you do?" Stephanie shook her head, tears spilling. "Nothing. But someone wanted this to look like everything." Hours later, Cole confronted Langford in the driveway, voices raised, cameras flashing from across the gates. "You planted this." Cole shouted. "You handed it to me," Langford sneered. "You mixed business with emotion. Now the board wants you out. Congratulations, you've turned Maxwell Enterprises into a soap opera." Security pulled them apart as reporters swarmed. Stephanie watched from the shadows of the hallway, heart splitting in two. This was what he'd feared. This was why he'd built walls. And now those walls were crumbling, because of her. That night, Cole found her in the servants' corridor, suitcase in hand. "You're leaving?" he asked, voice hollow. "I have to," she said quietly. "If I stay, they'll destroy you." His voice cracked. "You think I care about their power?" "You should," she said gently. "Because it's the only thing keeping your world intact." He stepped forward, grabbing her hand. Then let it fall. "I can rebuild. But I can't rebuild without you." Tears streaked her cheeks. "You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking with my heart," he said. "For once." Stephanie looked up at him, this man who had spent his life mastering control, now trembling like a boy afraid of loss. She whispered, "You once told me love makes us visible. Then you should know, walking away from you will be the hardest thing I've ever had to be seen doing." And with that, she turned, tears falling freely, and disappeared down the corridor. Cole didn't stop her this time. He just stood there, breaking silently in the light of the storm's afterglow. The news spread like wildfire. By dawn, every major outlet had Cole Maxwell's name trending. By noon, photos of the mystery Maid filled gossip sites. And by nightfall, Maxwell Manor, once silent and sacred, became a fortress surrounded by flashing cameras. Stephanie's name wasn't revealed, but the internet didn't need it. Headlines read, "Millionaire CEO's secret affair." "Employee scandal rocks Maxwell Enterprises." Her face, blurred, but familiar enough to those who worked inside. Stephanie stayed hidden in her small apartment across town, curtains drawn, phone off. She hadn't heard from Cole since that night. Maybe he was saving himself. Maybe he was saving her. Either way, she'd lost both her job and the fragile peace she once had. The city outside moved on. But inside, time froze. Days blurred into nights, nights into silence. Anita was the only one brave enough to visit. She stood at the doorway one morning, holding groceries. "You look like a ghost, Steph." Stephanie forced a weak smile. "Ghosts don't feel pain." Anita sighed, setting the bags down. "You did the right thing leaving. You saved him from the press tearing you both apart. Then why does it feel like I'm the one who's been torn apart?" Anita squeezed her shoulder. "Because love's cruel like that. It asks for all of you, even when you've got nothing left to give." Meanwhile, across town, Cole Maxwell was a man under siege. The board demanded his resignation. Langford leaked more proof. And the world that once respected him now devoured him. Reporters camped outside his gate. Cameras flashed when he stepped outside. For the first time in his life, Cole didn't care. He sat in his dark study, whiskey untouched, staring at the empty chair across from him, the one Stephanie used to polish every morning. The house was quiet again, colder than ever. He'd gotten what he'd built, isolation, and it felt like punishment. His assistant entered quietly. "Sir, the board meets at 10. They'll expect your decision." Cole nodded absently. "Cancel it." "Cancel, sir, they'll." "I said cancel it." His voice cracked. "I'm done answering to people who never knew what mattered." That night, he drove. No destination, no direction, just miles of rain-soaked roads and a heart that refused to stop aching. He ended up outside a small diner on the city's edge, the kind of place that smelled of coffee and old country songs. He sat in the car for a long moment, staring at his reflection in the windshield. For years, that reflection had been his armor, perfect, composed, untouchable. Now, it just looked empty. Inside the diner, the waitress poured him coffee without asking. "Rough night." He smiled faintly. "Rough life." She chuckled. "Happens to the best of us. Usually starts with a woman." He looked down, then nodded once. "You're not wrong." Back in her apartment, Stephanie tried to rebuild her life one shift at a time. She found work at a local cafe, small, quiet, unremarkable. But even there, she felt eyes on her. The shame of being that woman. Still, she kept moving. She refused to let her love story become her ending. One afternoon, she caught her reflection in the cafe window, tired, older somehow, but stronger. Then a voice behind her said softly, "You make coffee better than anyone I know." Her heart stopped. She turned. Cole Maxwell stood there, no suit, no entourage, just him. His eyes softer, his smile uncertain. "Cole," she whispered, disbelief flooding her voice. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for something that feels real," he said. "Turns out it's still you." Her breath caught. "You shouldn't be here. You've lost enough already." He shook his head. "I didn't lose you to protect my name. I lost my name trying to protect you." Tears welled up in her eyes. "And what do you have left now?" He smiled faintly. "Freedom. To finally choose what matters." They sat in the corner booth. For a while, they didn't speak, just listened to the rain tapping on the windows like an old song they both remembered. Finally, Stephanie whispered, "You shouldn't have come." "I had to," he said. "The house feels dead without you. I thought silence was peace, but it's just loneliness dressed up pretty." She looked at him, voice trembling. "And what about your company? Your reputation?" "I resigned," he said simply. Her eyes widened. "You what?" "I walked away. Langford can have his empire. I'll build another. But I can't rebuild another you." A tear slipped down her cheek. "You shouldn't have to give up everything for me." He smiled sadly. "Maybe everything I had wasn't really mine until I lost it for something real." Stephanie looked away, her hands shaking. "And what if we don't make it?" "Then at least we tried," he said. "For once, I want to live with heart, not fear." Just then, the cafe door opened. Anita walked in, spotted them, and froze. "Stephanie," she said softly, then smiled knowingly. "Guess love's not done with you two yet." Stephanie laughed through tears. "Guess not." Anita placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then make it count this time." She turned to Cole. "You take care of her, Mr. Maxwell." He nodded solemnly. "I intend to." As the night deepened, they stepped outside together. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening beneath the soft city glow. Cole reached for her hand, gently, cautiously. She didn't pull away. He looked at her, voice low. "You know, every time I closed my eyes this past week, I saw you standing in that hallway, suitcase in hand. I wanted to stop you, but I didn't. That's my biggest regret." "And mine," she said, "was walking away before you could." He smiled, tears shining in his eyes. "Then maybe this time, neither of us walks away." She squeezed his hand. "Then let's go home." He blinked. "Home?" She nodded. "The one you built to hide in. Let's make it a place to live instead." As they drove back to Maxwell Manor that night, the mansion loomed ahead, not cold, not lonely this time, but waiting. The media would move on. The rumors would fade. But the story between them, the one the world misunderstood, would keep unfolding quietly, in the soft spaces of forgiveness and courage. Dawn broke over Maxwell Manor for the first time in months without the press at its gates. The world had moved on to fresher scandals. But inside the mansion, a quieter story was just beginning. Stephanie stood at the tall windows of the East Wing, watching sunlight spill across the marble floors she once polished as an employee. Now she stood beside Cole, not as the maid, not as the secret, but as the woman he had chosen. Still, the silence between them held the weight of unfinished business. "Are you sure about this?" she asked softly. Cole nodded. "If I'm going to start over, it has to be honest. No lies, no titles, no hiding." He turned from the window, eyes clear. "Today I meet with the press. I'll tell them the truth, that what happened between us wasn't exploitation. It was love. And that I resigned because I refused to live a lie any longer." Stephanie's breath caught. "They'll twist it, Cole. They'll make me a villain again." He shook his head. "Then I'll keep saying your name until they see the woman I see." Tears welled in her eyes. "You don't owe me that." "I do," he said quietly. "Because you gave me back my humanity." Later that morning, cameras gathered outside the manor. Cole stepped up to the podium, alone. The world waited for excuses, for denial. Instead, he spoke with disarming calm. "I made mistakes," he began. "Not in loving her, but in letting fear dictate how I lived. Power without compassion is emptiness. And I've been empty for too long." Flashbulbs exploded. Questions flew. But all Stephanie heard from the safety of the window upstairs was the steadiness in his voice, the same steadiness that once made her trust him. When he finally walked back inside, she met him in the hall. "You just declared war on your own world," she whispered. He smiled. "Then let's rebuild a better one." Weeks passed. The house changed with them. The cold marble floors were softened with plants and music. Cole opened parts of the manor to charity programs, literacy workshops, job training for women in service work. "Every corner of this house owes someone a new beginning," he said. Stephanie helped design the program. She oversaw every detail with the same precision she once brought to cleaning. But even in progress, shadows lingered. One afternoon, she found herself in the piano room again, staring at the keys. Cole entered quietly. "You miss who you were here, don't you?" She smiled faintly. "The maid part? Maybe. Things were simpler then. I didn't have to think about whether I belonged." He came closer. "You always belonged. You just couldn't see it yet." She looked up at him. "Then why does it still feel like I'm living someone else's life?" "Because transformation hurts," he said. "But so does staying small." The reckoning wasn't just his. It was hers too. Stephanie began to attend the public events, despite whispers and side glances. At first, her hands trembled when she spoke beside him. But one evening, during a foundation dinner, a reporter asked bluntly, "Do you really believe a maid and a millionaire can coexist without imbalance?" Stephanie took the microphone. Her voice didn't shake. "I don't believe in balance," she said. "I believe in respect. I scrubbed these floors for years, and they reflected his world back to him. Now he helps me build a world that reflects both of us. That's not imbalance, that's partnership." The room went silent. Then applause, slow, genuine, unstoppable. Cole watched her with pride that softened every line of his face. Later that night, as they stood beneath the lanterns in the garden, he whispered, "That was braver than anything I've ever done." She smiled. Maybe courage is contagious. But life doesn't redeem itself without one last test. Langford returned, suit pressed, tone smooth, eyes cold. He appeared at the manor uninvited, carrying an envelope. "You think you've cleaned up nicely," he said to Cole, "but investors still whisper. If you ever plan to recover your company, you'll need my signature to unlock the board's approval." Cole glanced at the envelope, then at Stephanie, who had joined them quietly. "And what's the cost?" Cole asked. Langford smiled thinly. "Distance. Publicly end your relationship, call it a lapse in judgment, and I'll reinstate your name." Stephanie's heart clenched. She waited for Cole's reply. He didn't hesitate. "Keep your company, Langford. I already found what was worth more." Langford scoffed. "You'll regret this." Cole smiled faintly. "I already did once. Not again." As the door closed behind the lawyer, Stephanie stepped closer, tears threatening. "You just burned your bridge back." He took her hand. "Then I guess we'll learn to fly." Months later, the mansion looked alive again, laughter, music, the smell of home-cooked meals replacing cold silence. The charity flourished, the gossip faded, and Cole and Stephanie built something far richer than either imagined. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the terrace, Cole whispered, "You know, sometimes I still wake up expecting the old house, quiet, empty, sterile." "And what do you see instead?" she asked. He smiled softly. "You, humming while you work, touching things that were never meant to be touched, and somehow making them better." She laughed. "So you're saying I still break the rules?" "Every day," he said. "And thank God for that." A year had passed since the scandal that almost destroyed them both. But time, like love, has its way of softening sharp edges. Maxwell Manor, once a fortress of silence, now breathed like a living thing. Children's laughter echoed from its open courtyard. The once locked ballroom now hosted charity dinners and music nights. The house that once hid shame had become a home that radiated grace. And at its heart were two people who had learned the hardest lesson of all. That real love doesn't need perfection, just courage. Stephanie stood in the garden that morning, the sun brushing her brown skin with gold. She was overseeing a group of young women setting up tables for the New Beginnings fundraiser, a program she and Cole had built to help women in domestic work gain new skills and opportunities. Her name was now on the foundation's board. Her story, the one that once brought her shame, was now her testimony. As she directed the volunteers, she heard his familiar voice behind her. "You still manage this place like you own it," Cole teased. She turned, smiling. "Someone has to make sure the boss doesn't forget who really runs things." He laughed softly, stepping closer. "Don't tempt me to put that on a plaque." "You wouldn't dare," she said playfully. He leaned in. "You'd be surprised what I dare now." Their laughter faded into a comfortable silence. The kind that didn't need words. The kind built on everything they'd survived. Later that afternoon, guests began arriving. Donors, journalists, old friends, even former critics. For the first time, Stephanie didn't flinch under their gazes. She'd earned her place here, not as the maid, but as the woman who'd turned scandal into salvation. When she took the microphone to speak, the entire hall quieted. "I used to believe my worth was measured by what I could clean, fix, or serve," she began softly. "But love, real love, taught me that healing isn't about wiping away the past. It's about using it to light the path forward." She glanced at Cole. His eyes glistened with quiet pride. "So if you ever feel invisible," she continued, voice trembling but steady, "remember this. Visibility isn't about being seen by the world. It's about being known by one soul who looks at you and says, 'I see you. Stay.'" Applause erupted, warm, genuine, lasting. And in that sound, Stephanie felt the ghosts of shame and judgment finally leave her for good. That night, after the guests had gone and the house was quiet again, Cole found her on the balcony overlooking the garden. Lanterns swayed in the evening breeze. The fountain below shimmered beneath the moonlight. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets, smiling softly. "You've changed this place." She turned to him. "We both did." "I don't just mean the house," he said. "I mean me." She arched a brow. "You always were a project." He chuckled. "You were the only one who ever finished me." They both laughed quietly, and for a moment, neither spoke. The stars above blinked like gentle witnesses. After a pause, Cole said, "Do you ever think about how it all started? That night you walked into my study at midnight." Stephanie smiled. "How could I forget? You looked like a ghost, and I was terrified of losing my job." "And now?" he asked. She met his gaze. "Now I'm terrified of losing the peace we built." He nodded slowly. "Then we keep choosing it, every day." They stood there, quiet again, until Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a thin, silver cufflink. Her eyes widened. "You kept it?" He nodded. "The one you returned in that little velvet box. I never wore it again. Thought I'd lost it for good, until I found it behind the piano last week." She smiled softly. "Guess it wanted to come back home." He took her hand, placed the cufflink in her palm, then closed her fingers around it. "Everything I ever lost somehow led me back to you," he said quietly. "Even this." Her throat tightened. "Cole." He smiled. "You once said love fixes what isn't broken. Maybe that's true. Because before you, I didn't even know what being whole meant." He dropped to one knee. Not with grandeur. Not with a ring the size of his fortune. Just a simple velvet box and a man stripped of ego. "Stephanie Williams," he said softly, "you walked into my life when I was half a man, and taught me what it means to feel again. You turned a house into a home, and a name into something worth sharing. So tell me, will you build forever with me?" Tears filled her eyes, her voice trembling through a smile. "Cole Maxwell, you already had forever the moment you let me stay." He laughed, eyes wet, as she knelt to meet him halfway. And under the soft glow of the lanterns, with no audience, no scandal, no fear, just truth, they sealed their promise with a kiss that felt like redemption itself. Months later, the tabloids barely remembered the scandal. But those who drove past Maxwell Manor would sometimes see two figures in the garden, laughing, working, or dancing barefoot under the lights. Rumor said the house had changed. Those who entered said it felt like stepping into love that had survived the storm. And somewhere behind one of those tall windows, a piano played again, not a melody of sorrow this time but of peace. Sometimes the stories we fear will destroy us become the very ones that save us. Cole Maxwell and Stephanie Williams were never meant to meet, yet destiny doesn't ask permission. Their love began in silence, was tested by fire, and ended in peace. Because when love is real, it doesn't fade, it transforms everything it touches. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Do you believe some people walk into your life, not to change you, but to show you who you already were meant to be?